Hello everyone, hope you're all doing well. It's been a few weeks since the last video because lockdowns have been easing and I've been going back to work and then out of work and then I'm in new work. Stuff's been happening, although over the last few weeks I have picked up a number of tasty new Transformers, none of which we'll be looking at today because I want to look at a G1 bot, one that's actually in good condition this time. Folks of all kinds, here is the 2003 commemorative edition of everyone's favourite scheming sneaker, G1 Starscream. It's got a bit of the old belly wobble going on there. I mentioned back in my first video, way before I had a light, that even though G1 Hound was my oldest figure, he wasn't my first figure. As far as I can remember, that honour went to the original G1 Starscream, but as you'd expect, that original figure didn't survive into adulthood. Well, sorta. I still had it some 18 years ago when this 2003 edition was released, but the tail wings were missing, the fists had gone, I'd lost the missiles and he had a nibbled tip. Such was the way of the childhood toy. Back in 2003 I worked in the Woking Toys R Us, which has recently received a much deserved tearing down after the entire company went out of business. In the early 2000s Hasbro were first starting to toy with some G1 nostalgia, and this guy here was one of the first figures released in those ranges through Toys R Us exclusively. So there was one perk to working in that hell shop. These reissue figures often had some sort of adjustments made to comply with updated safety regulations. Starscream could have evaded some changes if he had been released in the same form as the original 1984 release, but Hasbro decided to add in some spring-loaded rocket launchers the original Diaclone Jet Robo had, that was missing from the Western release of the toy. As a result, his null ray guns and his cluster bombs had to be made a little bit longer, and as you can probably tell, the result is kinda silly looking. I don't have the null rays anymore, Lord knows where they are, so I am kinda stuck with these ballistic cotton wool buds. In the original toy they would have fit snugly into the launcher looking a little like this, but I could see how myself, or a child, could accidentally swallow that. Especially as the mechanism fires from right down here, which means those missiles were pretty short. They got a decent amount of spring in them too, though you're not going to take down anything with a decent amount of stability. Looks wise he's relying a lot on the many stickers he comes with, some to better effect than others. Most had a nice bit of detail that really wasn't possible on figures back in the day, especially on the knees and these shoulder thingies. What are those actually called? The eye stickers are a bit of a disaster though, partially because of how cack-handily I applied them, and also because they kinda dominate his face and make him look like he's wearing giant comedy gold shades. A later version of this figure just painted those in, and I imagine that looks much better. Dicker gripes aside though, he does have one hell of a look to him. It's the wings splaying out sort of like an inverted cape that I think does it. Also you can tilt the plane head up for a cone head mode. As a G1 toy he's got all the articulation you would expect, which is basically none. His arms can swing up and down and they've got a rare bit of lateral motion. But that's only because of the transformation though. And do I care? Nah. This is from the days where gimmicks were king back in the 80s, and just being able to turn from one thing to another thing was all you needed. Imagination filled in the blanks. It's kind of mad to look back and think that it wasn't until the Beast Wars era that figures started to regularly have full articulation. Transformation's very early days of the range, which means there's a whole bunch of parts you need to pop off, such as the fists. Although you can get away with leaving the wings on if you're a little bit crafty. Starscream also features one of my favourite transformation moves ever, the cockpit loop-de-loop switch-me-do. Always a satisfying move. The arms swing around the back and lock into place, and then it's just a case of lining all the wings up. There's a landing gear you can plug in that I like to stow away in the cockpit while he's in robot mode. Also, I've never seen anyone do this, but you can pop the fists in quite snugly between his robo boobs. Probably won't stay there if he takes a bash in, but it's perfectly fine for display. And what a jet Starscream turns into, an F-15 Eagle to be precise. It's one of the most iconic designs of the G1 era. Just a spot on thing that is a jet. I'm not sure what else there is to say. Like with a lot of jet transformers, the underside kind of gives the disguise away, but compared to a lot of later jet seekers and transformers, this is far from the worst. I say that like I own a load of jet formers, but I don't even have any other seekers other than Starscream. Should probably transform this boy. Should have done that before I started, shouldn't I? He only takes 10 minutes to transform, what does it matter? Yeah, it's fine. It's fine, Ant. It's okay. Why don't you transform him at the start? I only have one other Earth jet, and it's this Dark of the Moon Starscream I brought off that Few guy, and even this one doesn't have too bad an underside really. You're just going to have to trust me that some Transformers are a bit of a mess under there, okay? This isn't the only reissue of this original figure there ever was, and he's probably second only to Optimus Prime in terms of how many reissues he gets, and I'm not even counting the Seekers in that, because if we did, Starscream would probably win by a country mile. There's a few I'd like to get, like there's a more cartoon accurate version of this one that was released in Japan in the same year. There was also a fully transparent Ghost version of him, but man, getting one of those in good condition that hasn't turned yellow would probably be quite a task. Probably cheaper to get one of the later moulds that was done as a Ghost Starscream, but you know, that wouldn't be the same. Overall, this figure isn't exactly one I can assess simply. G1 Starscream is an iconic toy and a proper shot of nostalgia. Hasbro did another release of this G1 toy in 2018 that had some of the extra features that cartoon accurate colour version did, such as the peg holes in the hand and a little Megatron gun that he could hold. The colours were based on this original toy though, rather than the cartoon, so if you're after the original design, that's not a bad one to try and get. To end things off, why not let me know what range you'd like me to cover on here? I've kind of been bouncing about between the generations a little. I'm missing pretty much everything between Armada and Siege, but I have been recently filling in the gaps a little bit. So if you have any characters or certain ranges of Transformers you think deserves a little bit of the spotlight, let me know. So, thanks for watching. I'll catch you all next time. Why not drop a like and subscribe maybe? Bye!